Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our Patreon exclusive podcast, The ChaseBase, a little podcast where me, Chase the Chaz Skripek from the Nerd Shit in the Dark podcast, is giving a little extra something back for those of you that choose to follow on our Patreon and listen. And I really thank you if you did come here to listen to any of these. So thank you. Today I'm doing another episode where I cover a video game. I know on the first one I said I'll start covering shows and shit down the road. And I do plan on doing that, but I just keep playing more video games, and I played one I really had a good time with. Up until the end. The end kind of turned me off a little. Not that it's a bad ending, it's just something that they do in video games sometimes that I don't really subscribe to, especially when I want to play lots of video games and I, don't have time to just keep chucking away at some. But for 98% of the time that I was playing this game that I'm talking about today, I really had a pretty good time. I couldn't really put it down, honestly. So, without further ado, the game that I am talking about today is Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars, last year's indie RPG by Sabotage Studios, Sea of Stars. And let me tell you, this game was really charming. I had been putting it off. I'd seen it floating around on the internet. It reviewed really well. People that I talked to claimed that it was a great game. So I had been putting it off, but thankfully, January, Prince of Persia was the only game that I was like dying to play. So once that was done, it really opened up my schedule to play all sorts of games, pretty much through till probably March. I don't think I'm really gonna start. Well, March is coming up though. Fuck. I don't think I'm gonna start Final Fantasy 7 Reload. I think that's Persona 3 Reload. I don't know what the re-word in the new Final Fantasy is, but I probably won't start that right away. I just play a lot of big games, and sometimes I just need a break. That being said, I'm probably gonna play Dragon's Dogma 2 when it releases, so look forward to a chase base about that. But for now, I have all this time to play all these other games. So hopefully you've been following the podcast. You're going to be talking about games. I got a Let's Play of Persona 3 Reload going on right now. It's on the YouTube channel. Check that out. But without further ado, let's dive into how I felt and my full review of Sea of Stars. So what is Sea of Stars? My plan for this episode today is I'm going to give you a basic premise of the story. Then I'm going to break down all the things I really enjoyed about the game, gameplay. It's mostly gameplay, but things like that. And then probably near the end, I will start to get into story beats and the thing I didn't necessarily like about the ending. But you will be good. I'm going to try to stay as spoiler-free as possible till near the end when I start talking deep story. But the basic story of this game is you play as one of two characters. Their names are Zale and Valir. They are solstice warriors. And in this world, what that is they are children born on the day of a winter and summer solstice. So Valir, she has the moon powers because she was born on the winter solstice. And then Zale, he's the guy. He has sun powers, and he was born during the summer solstice. And the moon and sun powers are kind of like your magic. It's their specific magic that they use throughout the game. And in this world, solstice warriors fight and defend the world from these villains known as the Dwellers, which the story really gets deep into and kind of goes all over the place, which I really did like about the story. But like I said, I won't get too deep in that till later. But you follow these two characters, and they have a friend that comes along who doesn't have magic. His name is Garl. They're separated when they're children. It does a little flashback. The game throws you off in modern day, and then it goes back. I think it's a 10-year. They're training for 10 years, so they're like really young. They get separated from this kid Garl, and then when they go out to finally do their mission to fight the Dweller, Garl shows back up and he learned how to cook and fight. And Garl's great. Garl's a G. I think his name is Garl because he is a G. He's a fucking G unit. He's the kind of friend you want around all the time. And I mean, I like this character. When we were kids, I was a little worried about him. I was like, oh, shit, is this kid just here to die? But no, he becomes a part of your party, your first member of your party. Really, really, really cool character. It's a game that has some very... It's a light game. It's like the sun and the moon, right? There are bright moments and there are bright moments in the dark. And I think this game introduced its characters really nicely and throws you into this world. You, like I said, you're in this order of Solstice Warriors where there's only 2 other Solstice Warriors left. They're kind of like you're their proteges in a way, and then you work for I want to call him the Grand Master, but he's, I don't know, he's like the head dude. He's like the leader of the group, and he sends you off on your mission, and there's definitely something going on in the background, and things totally start to spin off as you go, but that is the basic premise of the game. You're off to fight I can't remember the first dweller. That's a little spoiler. There is supposed to just be one dweller left by the time you start this game. I think it's the Dweller of Dread is the one that you're initially going to find. And then, like I said, the story kind of spirals from there. But really fun, really charming. The characters are really great. You meet lots of new characters on the way. Your party grows. Just a fun little story with twists and turns along the way. And I will get more into detail about that as we get kind of near the end of this. So let's talk a little bit about what the game is like. So if you've seen anything about it, or if you've heard this game, or if you haven't, it's a game that is designed to look like an 8-bit Super Nintendo kind of look. Think old JRPGs from the Super Nintendo area, whether that be Final Fantasy. I hear a lot of it borrows from Chrono Trigger. I have actually only played Chrono Trigger when I was a kid, so I don't really remember it super well. I am planning to sit down and, because I had such a bop with Sea of Stars, and anything that is even remotely like that game, I'm like, all right, I'll give it a whirl. So I'll probably be playing Chrono Trigger here soon, but I guess it really borrows from that. So you have like an overworld that you're kind of like a miniature chibi version of yourself when you're on that part, and then you go into different towns and sections where it's then, you're still like a little chibi, but it's like, Final Fantasy or Pokemon-esque. You have a little more control around your environment and shit. And I really like this setup because I like the look of old Super Nintendo games. I mean, I love playing games on the Super Nintendo just as it is. But say we made a Super Nintendo game today, and like the Super Nintendo ran with today's like type of hardware. That's what this game is. It's a Super Nintendo game if Super Nintendo games were the games that were still coming out and just getting better and better and better and better. And I loved it. You're in this world, but like you can climb. Like it implements climbing on stuff and like and wiggling. Like it feels like you're playing Uncharted, but you're in a little chibi form. And you get a hook shot at one point that like, and then like a little push, like you blow wind at things to like move things around. Like it makes it really fun to play in this overworld type of, because the combat is turn-based. So, which we will get to. The turn-based combat in this game is probably the thing for me that just kept me wanting more of it, which it's been a great year for me playing RPGs that do this like mix on the turn-based system that kind of keeps you coming back for more. I think for a long time I started falling out of turn-based fighting games because it was so just like attack, go, okay, wait, item. Ugh. Games now really put some fun mixes into it, and this one is with no exception. And I mean, I will get to that. That's my favorite part, so I'm really chomping at the bit to get to that section. But like I said, you can swim. I really like that there's no random encounter battles in this, like with old Pokemon where you run in the grass and you just get attacked. You can see who you're about to run into and fight. Like if you don't want to get into a fight, you can just avoid it. They'll chase you down sometimes, but you can typically get out of the way. You can use the hook shot eventually. Like you get items that if you hit them first, it kind of starts the battle with them losing power. Like it's your choice if you want to get into the battle. So I really like that. Random encounters can get. I'm playing through Mega Man Battle Network 3, and even though I love those games, it's just like fucking random encounters. It's just like anxiety. Even if you really like fighting, Like sometimes you just want to get from point A to point B, and this game does a pretty good job of allowing you to choose if you want to get into a tussle or not, which comes in handy if you're like dying and you need to go heal somewhere or anything like that. And that's another thing about the overworld is, at least at the beginning, most of the beginning of the game, I found it near the end that this wasn't so much the case, but save states and these little campfires are pretty much everywhere. Like you can save and you can heal for the most part pretty much. You don't really go long stretches with worrying that you're going to die at any point in time. So you go to the campfire, you can cook and make meals, and or you can rest. So if you make the meals can either heal your MP or your HP, and like I said, you rest, and then it plays like sounds like old Donkey Kong music, and then you're healed. And then right above those are usually always like little save books, and you can go save. So I really appreciated that. I mean, I like a game that you can save anywhere, but if you're not going to have that, at least have them pretty much everywhere, which really comes in handy. It sucks sometimes when I would use like my food that I cook to heal up my stats, and then it's just like, oh fuck, there's a fire right there. But you get over it pretty quick because the game riddles you with stuff to make food with, so no worries there. I'm kind of saving the combat talk till the end, because that's not the end, but that's mostly what I'm gonna talk about because it's my favorite part. But I think overall this game, it's very not severely easy, but it is an easier game. There are challenges, there are little puzzles that you can be proud of yourself for doing, but it was never a taxing game. If I was ever stuck, it was only for a little bit. Even fights, I didn't lose super often. So that was one thing. If you're looking for like a super hard game, this one really isn't it, but I think there is a charm in like it's challenging enough and it's just enjoyable. And like for instance, a lot of the game is go to area, solve a problem going on in the area, go to wherever the level's taking place. Each room has a puzzle to get an item to either unlock a different room or get you further. And all of those puzzles are relatively easy. Like it only takes you a few seconds to kind of figure out like, oh, this is what I have to do. There are a lot of them, so that keeps it fun. Every room is like a different little thing, but you're never stuck for very long. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I was solving them relatively quick. So not the most challenging game, but I think that's what makes it so fun is sometimes I get stuck in these games and I'm just like, I'm so fucked off that I even have to look. But when you don't and you can just keep going, and like I said, the combat's the best part. So it's really just like you're doing these things waiting to get into another fight. So you know you're going to have so much fun when you get to the next fight that you're like, whatever, I'll slide through these little easy challenges. I think if you're a kid, it might, be a little harder to solve, but those of us who have played any Zelda game can figure this out pretty easily. And like I said, you're going from area to area. I thought the plot was very like an anime. I said it on Nerd Shit in the Dark. It's very much like a little anime where like you start with your main mission. There's an overall quest, but you're stopping from like town to town to solve, one area's issues. Like for instance, the first place you stop, at least that I remember, is this like mole village, and they're having a problem in like their underground facilities, and you got to go help out, and that's your first kind of like dungeon that you go through and fight a boss at the end. But like you help these little villagers, and because you've helped them, there's like another piece of your overall story. Like every little story has nothing's filler. By the end or throughout, you've solved something happens for the overall story, but you're also figuring out like the story that you're in. So I really like that. And you kind of just travel, like you'll get out of one area, go back to the main overworld, walk to the next spot, go to that town or castle or dungeon sort of place. Same thing. You meet people, you meet a lot of interesting characters that you can do stuff for. And that's what gave it that anime vibe. I mean, just like the characters. I mean, Garl, your G of a friend, he's very anime, like happy-go-lucky, save the day kind of guy. And yeah, and that continues throughout the whole game. It gets a little more like near the end, like 50%, it's all kind of, you're really heavy into what's going on in the main plot. But for the beginning of the game, you're just doing these fun little town missions. And yeah, really nice. And like you go from town to town and get different, there's shops in the town, so like you can upgrade your items. It's like that, very basic, like, oh, there's a new sword for Zale, I'll buy his upgraded sword. Oh, there's a new staff for Valir, get that. So throughout the game, you can either find chests. I would recommend if you see a chest, try to get it. find it. Most times you get some sort of either armor upgrade or item, like your sword upgrade. And then you can have each character gets 2 like extra things. I guess they're like bracelets or something to give you other stat bonuses in other areas, which is nice. So definitely want to keep getting those. But most times the shops sell the like swords and staffs and shit. But, for those other upgradable items, you want to find chests, which are everywhere. And like the other puzzles, they're not hard. If you can see one, you can pretty much figure out how you're going to get to it and get it. Because you're going to need to upgrade your weapons and stuff. I think what makes the game so easy is the fact that I was constantly getting the new items that up to my strength or speed or yada, yada, yada. Because I'd say if I didn't and I tried to fight these things, there was a moment early on in the game where I went into a fight and I wasn't dealing as much damage as I had thought. And that's when I learned, like, get every item upgrade you can. So that came in handy. And, like, you level up, and when you level up, everybody shares experience. So if you, like, eventually you get, like, 5 people in your party. And you don't have to switch between them. You don't have to worry about one guy not fighting and he won't level up. You all have shared experience. So whenever it levels up, everybody levels up. It boosts most of your stats. You have attack, defense, magic attack, magic defense, mana points. I'm probably forgetting. Oh, there's HP. And I think that's it. I could be forgetting one. And you'll get a boost of some number, and then it allows you to pick one stat that you'd like to give a little extra to. And it's fun to like blend that with all the characters, see where they might need some more stats. I found out very early on I wasn't putting anything in my MP. Definitely stack MP if you can, because it really comes in handy to have more MP later on than earlier on. Like, to be able to use special moves without having to charge your MP is very helpful. Very, very helpful, especially in the combat. So with all that out of the way, let's get into my favorite part of this game, which is the combat. I did hear some people talking that it does get a little repetitive and it wears people out. Not for me. So everything you're about to hear me talk about with the combat, it's all positive. So if you came here to hear any negatives, so that's only in the story at the end. And it's not even the story's fault. It's just the way the game is. But let's dive into the combat. So like I said, it's a turn-based system. So you get, say, let's set a scene. From the beginning of the game, it's you, Valir, and Garl. So it's the 3 of you at the start. All 3 of you are in the fight. And it depends. Sometimes you're fighting 2, sometimes you're fighting 3, sometimes you're fighting 4 enemies at a time. It just depends what kind of battle you're getting into. So battles kind of start. And the first thing I want to get into is though it's turn-based, it keeps you as a player very involved, which I like. So like not typically, but in like old versions games, like I've been playing through Final Fantasy VI, you just kind of pick your attack and let your, person do the attack and then wait for the next time you can attack. This game has a really fun little system where, and it's something that I do in video games anyways, thinking it does anything. So I really appreciate it in this one. You can go for an attack. So say you're using Zale, who uses his sword, and you go for just a slash attack. When you are about to hit an enemy, you can hit, I played on my computer, so it was the space bar. I think it's like the A button if you play on controller. And if you hit that right before you land an attack, you can do a double strike, which does more damage. So boom, you jump up, and you got to time it just right. It's pretty easy, but there were a lot of times where I thought I timed it and I only hit the one attack. So like typically you want to do that so you can kill people quicker. Same with Valir. Same with every character. They all have their own little double attack that you can hit with. And the same goes vice versa when an enemy is attacking you. If you hit the space bar, or I'm just going to say the attack bar when you're being attacked, you can do not really a parry. It's like a block. You still take damage, but you'll take less damage. That one's a little tougher to time. All the enemies do their attacks differently. Like everybody's moves are very specific to them. So once you know how an enemy's going to attack, you can be prepared for it, but it's not always the same. So, that keeps you pretty involved. Like there's no just waiting for your next turn if you don't want to like take more damage. You have to play this little game. And that's just your basic attacks. Then throw in like people's magic abilities. For instance, Zale has a move where you charge a big sun ball and shoot it at the enemy. And I mean, you're not doing anything crazy, but you hold in the space bar and it charges 3 times. And like you can let it go earlier on and it'll do less damage. But like if you time it to do its biggest damage, you're involved and you let go and it blasts people. And it can usually, if the enemies are close enough, like sometimes they're spread out, so attacks won't hit. It'll only hit the person you're targeting. But if enemies are close enough, certain attacks will hit all of them. So like you blast a big sunball at like 3 dudes that are standing in front of you, even though you aimed at one of them, the game let you know, you're also going to do a little damage to these motherfuckers too. So that's fun. And like there are abilities and attacks that allow you to move enemies and yourself around like the battle screen. So that makes it pretty involved and fun as well. So that's just the basics of the combat that makes it really fun and makes you involved. And like I said, you get other party members throughout the game who have different type of attacks. Oh, I should definitely mention Valir has this moonerang that she throws. It's just a half moon, not a half moon, like a quarter moon, and it's like a boomerang, and she shoots it at the enemy, and as it bounces back to you, you can hit the attack bar and bounce it back. So it does like a bounce, 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 and it gets faster and faster as it comes back. And as long as you can keep timing it, you can keep bouncing it, and that shit does so much damage. It's fantastic. I use that move all the time. It doesn't take up too much MP, especially once you've boosted it, the MP gauge. But it's a sick move, and like I said, it keeps you. And another character has like poison darts that you kind of do the same thing. She like jumps through portals, and as she reaches the top, if you hit the attack button, she'll do it again and again and again and again. And it's really cool. It's a really fun way to keeping you, from just playing an autopilot type of game. And I can appreciate that, because some games you do just feel like you're going through the motions. But with this one, it was always something different. Even when you knew the enemies or the combinations of enemies, it was like, okay, how am I gonna do this? So that was basically the basic attack combat things. And then it goes a little richer. So like I said, Zale has his sword, which counts as a slash. Every attack has its own like type. The sword is a slash. Spear and then Garl, I think he uses like a pan. I honestly don't. It's like a cork. I don't know what it is, but it does like a bop, like a hammer damage. And that's what the spear and his do. And then you have your magic, like the sun and the moon. And I said you get that girl later that has poison. Somebody you pick up later has like dark. Garl, he doesn't really have any, so he just stays with his basic attacks, but he's pretty fucking tough. But you use these to, one, different enemies have different, like some are weak against the slash, some are weak against the moon, some are weak against the sun. So you want to target weaknesses, your basic Pokemon style, Pokemon or any RPG style, target weaknesses, kill the bad guy a little quicker. But I think the main reason they give all these different abilities for is sometimes you're in a battle and you'll get, let's say there's 4 enemies. 2 of them might have this little roulette wheel that kind of comes up on the screen. Now, basically the enemies have just like a number, like a 3, a 2, or a 1, and that means how many turns it's going to be until they can attack. So if somebody has a 3, it's typically like, oh, one of your characters can go, another of your characters can go, and another character can go before that one strikes. And it varies. Most battles you get, 2 2s and a 1, or that's always switching too. And then it repeats. As that counter goes down, it repeats. But every once in a while, there's a roulette wheel with that. And what that is like, it'll show, say, 2 swords, a sun, and a hammer, or something like that. It's always different. But you have that amount of time, however many turns it's telling you, to hit that enemy with those attacks. Because if you don't, they're going to hit you with their special attack that does all sorts of things. It can heal, it can summon different monsters, it can hit you really fucking hard. It's always something different. Another like specific thing they put in the game where most enemies have their own special attacks, and if you don't hit them in that time frame with the right combination of attacks, you're going to take the damage. And if you do hit them, it stops them. It ends their turn even before the count. Like it resets the counter clock, and then once everybody's turns go away, it can reset, and like if the battle's not over, they'll get another roulette. You got to figure out. I mean, most boss battles, most fights, you are trying to solve those roulette wheels throughout it randomly all the time. And it just keeps you really involved, especially like, man, some of those bosses, even some of the like little guys later on have like huge roulette wheels that you got to like, ooh, okay, how do I get all these in that amount of time? And sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I think usually it was pretty possible to stop, but there were a couple that I was just like, I got to do those types in one turn. I don't think I fucking can. I think I'm just going to have to take the hit. And Valir has a move. I think another one of them has a move that like you can put a shield up on your team so they won't take damage. But that doesn't always help you either, because sometimes the special move does like 3 hits. So even though the shield blocked 1, and you're still getting hit by a couple. But for the most part, you'd solve these little puzzles mid-battle. And yeah, I think that was part of it too. Like every fight, even if you do the same fight over, it wasn't always guaranteed that the roulette wheel was always going to be the same. So that just made it really fun. Like you'd see like, oh, this person has 3 moons and 3 poisons and 2 sword strikes, and we got to do it in 3 turns. And it's like, okay, I know that Zale has the sword, so he'll go first and try to land a double hit. And then it's like, okay, Valir has to land 3 of her Moonerang hits, so we got to really time this right. And then the poison girl has to land 3. So, and then you wouldn't always get it. You sometimes the Moonerang, there'd be too many people, so you'd be bouncing it around 4 villains, and it would get too fast before you could take them out. And it was like, fuck. So always fun, always involved. I think that's what really kept me back for more. I was just dying to play some more of the combat. And as long as my characters weren't weak or hurt or I needed to heal, I would just dive into fights because that was my favorite part of the game. Exploring and running around was fun, but like I said, it was rather easy. The fights were where I could actually use some like brain power and really get into it. And a really good thing that they throw into the combat system, because as you start getting party members throughout the game, you still can only have 3 people on the field at the same time. But the game adds a swap function that allows you to just go down. Like if you don't see who you have on the field can do the damage you want to do, or even if like you don't want a certain character to die and there's somebody that's like got way more health in the dugout, you can just swap them out right there. And like it doesn't like cost a turn, it doesn't cost anything. Like new characters in and they're doing whatever damage you need them to do. So I really enjoyed that. And like on top of that, there were combo moves where like certain members of your party could team up to do certain attacks, which is definitely needed for a lot of the roulette wheels. Like it was like, oh, how can I get both of those? Like sometimes it would show 2 swords, 2 hammers. And if you use, say, Valir and Zale's combo move, it does a sword and a hammer. But if you land a double hit on it, that's how you get it. So like different combos from different party members would really come in handy in those kind of scenarios. And they do extra damage. So that was really fun. One thing I forgot to mention is you learn early on in the game how to use magic without using magic, is what they call it. And what that means is like you can use your basic magic moves that take away your MP. But if you do a basic just hit on enemies, they'll shoot out these like little balls of chakra or mana that you can like choose to absorb before your attacks. So if like say Garl hits somebody and they drop a couple orbs, I hit the shift key on Zale and he would absorb that and it would give him sun energy. And then like you would have a slash. If I just did a basic slash, that basic slash now was sun and slash. So you were using magic without using your MP. Because as you use that goes down. But when you do a basic attack, say you just do a normal strike, you always get a few MP points back. So if you're running low, do a couple basic attacks and you can build your MP up without using like MP restoring items and wasting turns. Not that that's always a waste of a turn, but that was a really cool system because like if you're somebody who's worried to use your MP, well, you're always guaranteed that you're probably very well able to get it all back in the same fight. That I really liked. I mean, there's nothing about the combat that I didn't like, even in scenarios where I was dying or losing. I also like there was an item that I put on Valir so that every time she'd land a normal attack, she'd get an amount of her health back. So that was always pretty helpful. You do have recovery moves, which also if you like hit the attack button or the space bar when you're using a heal, you'll get extra health. Just another thing. I just feel like when I play Pokemon or something, if I throw a Pokeball, I hit the B button, or like I do an attack, I'll hit the A button, or when my health's going down, if I hold the arrow and spam V, it doesn't fucking do anything, but I do it. And this game was like, hey, just hit the buttons and it'll make things work. And I really appreciated that. And I think that is another thing that kept me coming back for more. I beat this game, I think my final hour count was somewhere around 27 or 28 hours. So it is a long game. There's a lot to do. And like I said, it's easy. So not a lot of that time is me just like, what am I doing? There might have been a couple points where I got lost, but never for super long. So yeah, and like basic combat's fun. Boss battles are pretty dope. I feel like I only really lost in a boss battle a couple times, and if I did, I knew what I had to do to go back and win it. Like every boss not only has the roulette puzzle, but they usually have some sort of like other puzzle that you kind of got to worry about taking care of. And that's really fun. The boss designs really sick. Just the look of some of these bosses in that 8-bit but like upgraded graphics. Oh, they're so everybody's look is so unique and they use those looks and those abilities to implement certain attacks or certain ways a battle's going to play out that just keeps you involved even more than what the game is already asking of you to do during a simple or not so simple fight. And I hope they make another one of these games. I really do. I had a great time playing it. I'd probably play it again, despite how I feel about how the story ends. It's just fun to play. And I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Because for me, a lot of games, I'm about to dive into the story, but I like, unless it has a really good story, I kind of skip past the story, especially in a game like this where you just read the text, there's no voice acting. But I did find myself reading it in this one. But typically I won't, and I just want to play the game because that's what I'm playing the game for, to play it. And this game was fun to just play, whether I was in the overworld or I was doing the combat that I just loved. And man, I can't. There's probably some stuff I missed about the overworld. Like you get a boat at one point, and you go from like area to area on the map to go to places, and riding the boat's really fun. God, there was this point where I was just climbing a mountain, and you could see this town that I was going to in the distance. I had to screenshot it. I just thought it was such a beautiful image. Like, man, it's a pretty 8-bit game. So can't say enough good about it. Now that I have said quite a bit of good about it, I'm just going to go into the story real quick. Like I said, I want to try to keep these podcasts a little lighter. It's just me reviewing a game. But I have to get into what I liked for 95% of it, maybe even more. Let's say 97. And then it was like 3% that I was just a little turned off by. So let's get into the story a little. So, like I said, you go on this journey to fight the Dweller, and it's you and it's I was Zale, so Zale, Valir, and Garl. And like I said, it's very anime like. So you're doing these side things. I'm not gonna get into the too spoiler territory of the little things that you're doing along the way, but eventually you find out that the two people that like trained you, not like the Grand Master guy, but the two other people, they don't like being Solstice Wars. They actually fucking hate it. So they team up with like the bad guys you are known to be going up against through half of the game and betray you and team up with the Dweller and like join this guy called the Fleshmancer, who is from allegedly a different dimension, and they help him out and they kind of like bring darkness to the world and destroy this whole fucking town that you are sort of involved with. So that was pretty wild. I thought that was a cool twist. And what I liked about the twist is they kind of leave the people, like sometimes these people, because you look up to them for half the game and you even fight with them at one point. It's a really fun fight. I was worried they were going to turn them back to the good side, and they never really do. So I appreciated that. Well, play the game. And like I said, I'm not going to spoil everything, but I am going to talk about a few things that I specifically wrote down and liked. Before I get into the part that I don't like, I just want to talk about this little part of the story. So I am spoiling a little more, but halfway through the game, a little over halfway, you travel the Sea of Stars to go to this other world, and the other world is very technologically based. It's been fucked with by the main villain, and that's why it's so tech-like. But all of a sudden, like, the aesthetic is different. It's all futuristic. All the 8-bit music, because the music, I haven't even touched on the music. Music's fucking great. It's just 8-bit music out the wah fucking zoo, and it sounds so good. All the battle themes, all the town themes. But then you go to this future world, and they add this like little technological background noise to it. So cool. So cool. You team up with somebody from this world earlier in the game. You just don't know that that's what their story is. Especially me. This girl, she has half a robot face, and for the entire time until we went to her world, I thought she just had like a weird scorpion from Mortal Kombat mask on. I didn't know her face was robot. So that was just a really cool twist because, like, your basic premise is old-timey, village sword and shield type of world, and then all of a sudden you're fighting fucking robots and everything's robots and all the people got turned into robots, and it just came out of nowhere for me. So I really liked that portion of the story. Like I said, most of the story until what I'm about to tell you happens, I was all in. I was reading all the dialogue. I was going with the twists. I was like, no way. Certain things happen, and I felt emotions. It was something. I basically spoiled one of the twists, so sorry about that. But I am gonna give just the part that I didn't like about the game. So you play through the whole fucking game, and you get to an ending, and the game is over. You fight the final boss. You're storming to go fight the Fleshmancer in this. You travel the sea of stars, which is basically time and space, eventually, to go to a different world, different dimension. It was really hard to be for certain what it was, and fight the Fleshmancer there. And, well, in the main ending, in the first ending, this is what I didn't like. These games that have different endings, and unless you look into it, there's really no way of knowing that. I mean, the game, I'll get to it. So you beat the general of the Fleshmancer, and you basically beat the game. And when you beat it, it plays out, it shows like the future, yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden, after the very fucking long credits that you can even go fast through, but they still take forever, it's shown that there are these 6 pillars that you can go back because your save starts right before you beat the game. And you can go back and do all these side quests to unlock the real ending of the game. So you get an ending, but you have to do these side quests that they only really tell you about after you beat the game the first time, and then go back and beat it again. And it's a really good fight, and the ending is way better. But I was really turned off by that you even call because like the story is a really driving force to this game, and you do beat the game, and you do beat a version of the story, but then you have to, and none of these side quests are too hard. There was one where you collect 60 of these rainbow conches that you're looking for throughout the game. I just found this to be like that, to be like, oh, you got to do all this stuff and then do it again to get the real ending of the game, which is a better ending, and you actually fight the Fleshmancer and not just his general. And it's like the hardest boss fight in the game. But it's like, why didn't you just make me do these before my brain told me I was done with the game, to go back and do it again? I don't know. That was one thing, because like once I had beaten it and I knew I had to do more because I looked up what to do for that part, I was really turned off even about playing the game more at all. Even though I liked it a lot, even though I was having a really great time, I was so just like, man, like why couldn't I beat the general and then the Fleshmancer come and we got to do some more stuff in the story and then beat him? Like don't give me credits and then show like the future and then be like, actually, you got to do this. It's like, I did not like that. So I won't get into the specifics of what that all is, but I did not like that. And once I was finished, I was good with there was a point where I was like, man, I'm going to miss playing this game. By the time I was done, I still miss like the before time, but I'm just like, yeah, well, thanks for making me do all that extra shit to get the real ending. I would have just rather, done like the rest of the game and go from point A to point B to A, B, Z, to Z, instead of going from A to Y back to fucking W. Well, not W. Because you got to do a few things. So it's like going back to fucking T and then getting to Z. You don't know. I guess you wouldn't do Y. Hope anybody's following that. You don't have to fight the general again. You just fight him when you get this final ending. And like a certain character is really important that is involved in that ending. And when the original story ends, you're just like, oh, I guess that person really is not involved. And then it's like, oh, wait, they are involved. And I don't know. It's just, if you know the game, you know what I'm talking about. And maybe that didn't bother everybody. And it's not even the biggest deal for me. This game is still a 9 out of 10. But I think it kept from being like a 9.5 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 by doing that. Especially when I'm already 20-something hours into a game and I'm just like ready to move on. and I'm so happy that I'm almost done, just to see like, oh, you actually have a few hours left to do. So, does it pay off? Yeah, you get really good, like a more solid ending to the story with more answers, and you get a much more challenging boss fight. I'll give it that much. But yeah, I could have took that and left it. But other than that one thing, dope game. Dope game. Really glad I finally got around to playing it. I hope they make a sequel or anything else that takes place in this world. Like I said, the world and all the little villages you go to, you're learning so much of the place's lore. And I would love to dive into some more of that lore or some of that world building that they're setting up in this. Like there's a whole sky continent that I would love to get into a little more than you get to do in the game. Or like the other universe where everything's technologically based. Just shit like that. There's definitely potential there to do that. So, with all that out of the way, that is my basic review. I'm more in depth, but I still feel like I could talk more in depth about it. Like I said, I'd still give this game a 9, despite how I felt about like the closing hours of it. So if you're into JRPGs, if you want to try one that is very involved combat, if you want to try one that's not super challenging but just a fun time to play through, I would totally recommend Sea of Stars. I'm sad I put it off. Indie games are just amazing, and this is just another one that I think was made with a lot of love for the genre and a lot of unique creativity. Even though it borrows a lot of things from other games, I think it makes its own place. And if they ever make a sequel, I will be playing it, buying it day one, just to do it again. So yeah, that is all I have to say for Sea of Stars. Thank you for coming in for another episode of the ChaseBase and for following us on the Patreon page. It's just a little something extra I want to give out to people that care to follow us from point A to point B. I like to map things out with letters today, I guess. We got a lot of things I'm gonna keep dropping ChaseBases. I'm watching through the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, which I'll be talking a little bit about in the upcoming Nerd Shit in the Dark. But if you want to hear a full review of it when I'm done, I'm probably going to cover that on the ChaseBase next. We got the Persona 3 Reloads. I think I mentioned that up top, but I wanted to give that. I'm putting the Baldur's Gate playthrough up on the Patreon for now. If anybody cares to listen to that, it's just me and Braden the Brad Neilster and our buddy Jared playing through Baldur's Gate. I'll probably keep tossing up Let's Plays and whatever I can record. But look forward to more ChaseBase. Miranda and I are talking about maybe doing a Doctor Who type of podcast to add to the Patreon. I'm just coming up with all sorts of ideas. So any recommendations or questions, you can always email me at nerdshitinthedark@gmail.com. Follow the main podcast everywhere. You probably already do if you're here. Yeah, tell your friends. Tell anybody that you like or care about and wanted. Or even if you don't, if you thought this was dog shit and you hate somebody and you're like, go waste an hour of your life, listen to this shitty podcast. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And we will see you guys on whether it's Nerd Shit in the Dark, whether it's South Park in the Dark, or whether it's the ChaseBase. I'll catch you later. Good night.